If you've ever walked into a garden center or nursery in early spring and grabbed a little cucumber plant or squash plant thinking that this is going to give me a head start, I totally get it. When we see these little healthy seedlings, why wouldn't we think that that's the best way to go, right? Especially when it's being sold at a local nursery. But here's what most gardeners don't realize. Some of the most popular summer crops actually do better when you plant them straight from seed directly out in the garden. So in today's episode, I'm going to share a few of my favorite tips from a full masterclass that I did called Direct Sowing Seeds for Success, including 6 summer crops that I always directly sow by seed, and why they tend to thrive when you skip transplanting. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm Audrey Crawford, a lifelong gardener from the Central Valley of California, and this is the Audrey Little Farm Show, where I take the guesswork out of gardening and help you grow a successful garden one simple step at a time. All right, so let's jump in. So direct sowing seeds straight into the garden is not only simpler and more affordable, it's actually better for certain crops. Plants like beans, cucumbers, squash, and melons don't like to have their roots disturbed. When you transplant them, it can stress the plant out or slow it down. But when you directly sow the seeds, they get to settle in without that shock, and that makes a huge difference. Plus, you don't need grow lights, potting trays, or a greenhouse. You just need a patch of soil, a few seeds, and a little know-how. But the big problem is that garden centers do not make this easy. It is so easy to assume that if it's being sold at the local garden center or nursery, that it's best to plant the crop that way, as a transplant. Or if it's available at your local nursery, it must mean that it's actually time to plant that crop, right? Or why would it be being sold locally when it's not supposed to be grown? But in reality, most stores sell transplants for crops that do way better when they're started by seed, simply because they're easier to market in little pots because people want that started plant. The other issue is that garden centers also get most of their plants way earlier than the recommended planting time. For example, our local nursery had summer crops available in February, and that is way earlier than I would ever recommend planting in this area, unless you're protecting your crops from the weather. So if you've ever bought anything like zucchini or okra as a transplant and it didn't thrive, it may not have been you. It might have just been a crop that should have been directly sown to begin with, and that would have been the only change that needed to be made. So let's break down 6 summer crops that I always plant from seed and how I get the best results that way. So the very first one is basil, and this is my favorite summer herb. And while it can be transplanted, it is so easy to grow from seed, and since it does not tolerate root disturbance well, it's best planted directly by seed. And you simply just plant the seeds a 1/4 inch deep, 12 to 18 inches apart, keep the soil well watered, and before you know it, you're going to have little basil plants growing. The second one on the list is beans. So whether you're growing bush beans or pole beans, both are super beginner-friendly crops to sow by seed. They're also super easy to handle because they're larger seeds, and they definitely are one that will do better for you if you sow it by seed. Don't buy them as transplants. All you have to do is plant them 1 inch deep, 6 inches apart. Bush beans grow without support, and they usually reach maturity quite a bit faster, whereas pole beans should be grown along a trellis. They're going to have a longer harvest window, but they're going to take a little bit longer to mature. And then cucumbers is number 3. These germinate really fast in warm soil and are one of my favorite crops to grow up our cattle panel arch. This way, it helps minimize the pest and disease issues, and it also makes harvesting so much easier. You just plant the seeds 1/2 inch to 1 inch deep and 12 to 18 inches apart. And then next on the list is melons. Melons are very commonly sold as transplants, but they don't tolerate root disturbance well either. But they are so easy to plant directly by seed, and as long as the soil is warm enough, you shouldn't have any trouble getting them to germinate. You just plant them 1/2 to 1 inch deep and space them about 3 to 4 feet apart. Each year, I also get so many melons that actually just self-seed from fruit that I didn't clean up from the previous year's garden, and they always sprout and grow beautifully. So it's just a testament to how well that crop really just grows from seed, because even the ones I don't intentionally plant pop up and grow great. And then the next one on the list is okra. This is a great summer crop that thrives in the heat. In fact, the warmer it gets, the better it seems to grow. And it's another crop with very sensitive roots, so it will always do better if you directly sow it by seed. You should just plant the seeds 1/2 inch deep, spaced 12 inches apart, and you'll likely be harvesting okra pods daily once they get going. Number 6 is squash. So squash would include both your summer squash and your winter squash varieties. So a few common summer squash varieties are zucchini and crookneck squash. And a few winter squash varieties would include butternut and spaghetti squash, as well as all of your pumpkins. And with these, you just plant them 1 inch deep and space according to the variety. Summer types are usually bushy and compact and usually can be planted a bit closer together, while winter squash tends to sprawl and needs more space. You can even grow most winter varieties up a trellis. So if you've tried sowing seeds before and have had spotty results, don't give up, because there's so many things that you can do to make it easier and more successful. So the first thing you need to keep in mind is the seeds need moisture to germinate. So you have to keep that soil moist after planting. This is critical for germination. And remember, the seeds are in that top layer of soil. So that might even mean you might have to water a couple times a day to keep that soil moist until germination occurs. The next thing is to watch the soil temperature. So when it comes to our warm weather summer crops, they need soil that is at least 70 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you're planting way too soon, that's the only issue. You just need to wait until the soil is warm enough. And then the third tip is to use protection for your seedlings. So if you've ever had issues with birds or critters or pests eating your young seedlings, there are a few things you can do to help with this. So I like to use strawberry baskets, wire mesh, or row covers to keep the birds off the young seedlings. Usually once the plants are about 6 to 8 inches tall, you don't have to worry so much. And then I sprinkle Sluggo or diatomaceous earth around the seedlings to help keep the slugs or snails away. And then the final tip is to reseed any bare spots or any areas that the seeds just didn't germinate to begin with. So it's totally normal for some seeds to lag. They might germinate at different rates, or depending on the age of your seeds, if they aren't as viable, some seeds might sprout and others might not. So just replant where needed. That's the beauty of the seeds. You don't have to go out and buy another transplant. You just grab a couple more seeds and reseed them. And oftentimes the second round grows even faster, because as the soil gets warmer, those summer crops will sprout even faster. So if this episode has excited you to try direct sowing, I would love to invite you to check out my full masterclass called Direct Sowing Seeds for Success. This masterclass will walk you through everything you need to know to successfully plant seeds directly into your garden. No grow lights, heat mats, or transplanting required. You'll learn which crops are best for direct sowing, how to prepare your soil, common germination mistakes to avoid, and tips for protecting and caring for your young seedlings. It's perfect for beginners or gardeners just looking to simplify their gardening life. So you'll find the link for that in the show notes below. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this episode gives you the confidence to try direct sowing some of your summer crops this season. It is simple, it's effective, and it might just be your new favorite way to plant. Until next time, happy gardening.